say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness.
Void One.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void Live. It's Thursday, the day before Valentine's Day, Thursday, February the 13th, 2025. And we are getting extremely, at least I am, getting extremely nocturnal. Jesus. The moon is super bright tonight, so I happen to be in rare form. It's going to be one of those nights. I really want to thank everybody for hanging out in the Discord. That's been a lot of fun. So it doesn't happen every single night, but like after the show last night, more people hung out in the live and chill room. Like we hung out for a while, talked. And you know what I find that's really cool about Discord? At least for the people that are here, that listen to this broadcast, is, man, we talk about all kinds of stuff, and you don't have to agree. Like, usually when you don't agree with somebody or people don't validate you, you get all offended. It ain't like that, man. We have, like, real cool adult conversations, and I don't know what's going on. I'm in the void. There I am. We have real cool adult conversations, and like we stayed up late last night talking about movies and stuff, and we're getting pretty good feedback on that Alien Code movie, which I think everybody should watch it. I mean, you know, like it leads up all the way to the end, right? And when you get to the end, that's when things get super interesting. Yeah, I was in the void. Yeah, I hit the button like 3 times and it wasn't going. So if anything crashes, I'm sorry. And I have some apologies I have to say right off the bat. One, you know, I open the phone lines up every single night and I don't hear the phones ring. And I figured out what's going on because I tested it today. So I have to have the browser open, right? I can't if I minimize it and the phone rings, I won't hear it. So that's what's been going on. So we missed some calls last night into the show, and I apologize for that. If I missed a call, And it's like, as soon as I miss it, I'll try to call you back. But if I totally miss it, then I apologize. Because sometimes I'm in and out of windows, right? I'm clicking on windows and stuff. And if that thing goes down and you call, I can't hear it ring. It's pretty stupid. I don't know why they have it. There's no way to change it either. So, but you can also join into the show I am in the live showroom in Discord. If you just look into the chat and you see the little green thing light up, you'll see me there, right? So, you can just jump in at any point in time there as well, too. It's kind of like calling in. I'm going to say what's up to Trey in the YouTube chat. Trey, Gypsy Jenny, what's up? MJ, Wes, Dutchy, Sudi, Delina, Dan, Sir Wolf, My Endless Road, Christy Belly, Rachel. Rachel says cray cray in the house. Good, we need a little crazy in the house. I said hi to Dan, didn't I? Yeah. I get everybody purple pencils. And I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, I apologize. And the lurkers and the listeners, if you're listening in on the station, anywhere you're listening at, whether it's the Fringe FM, TalkStream Live, Paranormal Radio app, wherever you're listening from, it's good to have you in here. So last night, I don't feel like we concluded like what we were talking about as far as like, are we actually in the physical realm when we get out of body, that kind of thing. It's what we did conclude though, and I think we talked about it quite a bit too after the broadcast in the Discord, but what we did kind of conclude about it is there is some kind of weird like bleed through, like the mind has something to do with that. But I think we kind of get it, right? Like, so if you get out of body and you just want to hang out in your bedroom or like your living room or the neighborhood or wherever you go, sometimes your psyche's going to have stuff that bleeds through, just like anything else, right? So when you're in a dream, so like when you're in a full-fledged dream, and this is all theory, but this is where we kind of left off, your psyche is doing everything, right? But when you're out of body, you're kind of, out of the physical body. So you actually are kind of moving around in what's called the physical realm, but your psyche can bleed through. And even if you slip far enough, a dream can fall back into that place too. So it's pretty trippy, right? It's okay to come out of the shadows. Who's in the shadows, man? You talking about the lurkers? Were you a lurker once, My Endless Road? I hope everybody comes out of the shadows, Now, look, if you can, we really need any support would be great, right? Like, we really need it. And speaking of which, like this weekend, I'll be adding to the tarot videos. If you're following that on YouTube, like I think half the people that watch are following that. And then we'll be adding some stuff to the Patreon and the member section this weekend too. So lots of stuff to catch up on. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is one of the coolest things that we really get into when it comes to OBEs. The two things are the coolest things to me. The two concepts, okay, for me, is one, being like a ghost in the physical realm and being able to affect the physical realm. Like, it sounds completely nuts, but I think we can do it. Two, social interaction. Like being able to get out of body with other people or go visit people and then remember it. And this was a big deal. And we already talked about this before, so I'm not going to keep rehashing it where, Joe Rogan talked to Thomas Campbell about that because that's a big deal. Like if we can do that, that is a massively big deal. So it's cool for us to share our stories and talk about this stuff and then to actually try it. So we started out this week last week messing around with the hypnagogic state. Now we're talking about, hey, what's really going on in the physical realm when we get out of body? And now into this book called Explorations in Consciousness. And I'm jumping around in the book for one reason, okay? This book has a lot of legal stipulations. So you're allowed to talk about it, read from it, do a review, but you can't read the whole book from start to finish on the for some reason. I don't know why it's so damn protected to me. Like, that's crazy, but so I'm kind of skipping around. But I did skip to the social interaction and communication. Right? Everybody, we want to go to the astral dojo and have an astral party. That's what we want to do. We want to hang out with everybody. So, but he says, Frederick A. Aardema, in his book Explorations in Consciousness, which I highly recommend that you get, he says that you will frequently encounter other people in the out-of-body state. So it could be tempting to assume that these are real people, but in the vast majority of instances, the people that you encounter are externalized portions of yourself. The majority of them, he says. They may either reflect relatively stable aspects originating from within your psyche or transient phenomena that come about as a result of your immediate preoccupations. The Astral Dojo, that's right. For example, a social attitude will automatically lead you to encounter people in the out-of-body state. So if you're a social person, you're probably going to, whether it's coming from your psyche or you're actually meeting like real people, you're probably going to meet people all the time in the out-of-body state. Usually such interactions hold no significance apart from your desire to interact with people. Nonetheless, he goes on to say, some of my experiences do suggest that it may be possible to interact with a real person. So he doesn't know this for sure, but are at least maybe an aspect of them, either by communication that occurs on a subconscious level or in terms of being able to accurately perceive their appearance, symbolic or otherwise. For example, a person who is in excellent mood, like someone that's super happy at the time when you get out of body, you might be perceived as having a very healthy complexion and a glow to your appearance. Conversely, visiting a depressed person tends to lead to an experience in a correspondingly depressing environment. In other words, similar to how the state of your own psyche may manifest in the out-of-body environment, this also occurs with other people, giving rise to atmospheric changes and the out-of-body environment. Of course, the idea of atmospheric influences is difficult to validate, right? We don't really have a way to prove that, because in most of the cases, perceived reality finds its origin in the subjective realm to begin with. So it's a lot of it's subjective. Now, worse, communication can be quite cryptic and symbolic in the out-of-body state, making any sort of verification in your interaction with others even more difficult. Okay, when he says that, this is why that I think it's really important that we study symbols. Okay, and I don't care if you do it like studying at the esoteric, the occult, magic, Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, or all of the above. It's important that you study like symbols, and not so much as like their universal archetypal meanings. That's important, but what they mean to you too, because that's when you really start to kind of investigate what symbols mean to you. Because you gotta look at all the archetypes first, and then once you start kind of decrypting things, whether it's your dream journal or whatever conscious exploration you're doing, certain symbols are going to mean certain things only to you, right? So archetypes play a role, but without, before I get into his journals, okay, and we're talking about hanging out with other people in the astral realm, remember that for some reason, the unconscious, the spirit world, whatever you want to call it, the placebo doorway, that place, loves to speak through symbolism. And this is why we've been doing rituals, ceremonies, and magic and stuff since the beginning of time, because it was one of the ways that we figured out, we can talk back and forth with it through symbols, because it seems to be working somewhat, right? But I don't know like how religious we should get with it. Always keep in mind that like some symbols are just going to mean something to you. That's where it can get confusing, and that's why it's important to keep a dream journal. All right, so here we go, back at the witching hour. Hey, by the way, we stayed up last night, I think all the way into the witching hour, which is pretty cool. MJ says, I'm not real social. Man, that's fine. You don't have to be social. You might be one of those travelers that just like to travel around the astral realm all by yourself, you know. That's cool. What's up, Jen? Rex2II. I wish I could decrypt some of those names. What's up, man? Thanks for joining us. All right. So he goes, I briefly fell asleep After the last projection, woke up with energy sensations. He's talking about like vibrations. What's up, Joanne? Did I say hi to you, Joanne? I think I did. So I quickly flew up into the void. This guy loves to play in the void, doesn't he? With the intent to go as deep as possible into it and try for some meaningful and intelligent communication. I started out with some flight until I felt I had gone far enough. And from there, I phased directly into an environment and quickly found myself standing in a large, bright room. The room had the appearance of a meeting room with several tables and chairs lined up. There was no one there. However, at the end of the room was a door leading into what looked like an office. I made my way there and entered, and the office was only sparsely decorated, bright with neon light, and the walls were painted white. The white room. See, I even had the damn phones down. There were blinds at the left end of the office, and I assumed there was a window behind them. I lifted the blinds, but only found a very smooth white wall behind them, and it looked more like a projector screen than a wall. Suddenly, I became aware of someone standing in the doorway. I turned around and saw a disheveled-looking character, around 60 years old, standing in the doorway. He looked like an old-fashioned professor with an Einsteinian hairdo. I reasoned that this was the figure with whom I was seeking to communicate, but he did not seem terribly interested in me and appeared instead ready to go about his own business and completely ignore me. I decided to start a conversation. Ooh. This is when it gets real interesting, right? Thanks for the sub, brother. Appreciate it. Rex. I'm just going to call you Rex. Thanks for subbing. Hi, I said. Hello, he responded. Perhaps we should talk. I'm not dreaming right now. I'm wide awake and alert, so it might be good to take this opportunity. He looked up at me from the corner of his eye and said, "Ah, yes, I know. You're the out-of-body experiencer who will write the trilogy." He said, "I will?" He goes, "Well, I did start to write some, but I only just started. I was not planning on a trilogy." And the guy says, So what do you want to know? He said, I searched for some sort of deep question and then asked him, why did I come to experience physical life? And the guy says, lectitude. Now, I never heard of that word. What does it mean? Information, he responded absent-mindedly. I'll have to look it up. The word might not exist. I then saw a little glint in his eyes, and then I woke up. So, apparently the guy met one of his guides or something, maybe. And then the guy said, the only reason why you came to live was to get information, data. That kind of goes along with Thomas Campbell's theory, right? And he has a note under this journal here. He says, an internet search confirmed that the word lectitude does not really exist. It was used here and there in several sermons I found on the web by religious types, but only as a misspelling of rectitude, which means moral uprightness. And the only other word that came close is latitude, which means freedom from normal restraints in conduct. Perhaps lectitude was a blend of both of these words, which is an interesting idea since they revolve around a similar theme, yet have opposite meanings. Still, in the end, I find myself unable to really make sense of it. That's pretty cryptic, see? So sometimes it's not just symbols. Sometimes weird stuff happens that doesn't make sense, and I think it's really cool that he's trying to decrypt it, you know? So cryptic communication is usually the result of remote representations of language, and such is often associated with a lower level of lucidity. However, the symbolic use of language may also represent the rudimentary use of the inner senses during communication, an intermediary step towards full-fledged nonverbal communication. It is possible, for example, to have a direct knowing of the meaning of the message being communicated, even though the message would be very difficult to decipher on its own. Thus, when faced with cryptic or abstract communication that you do not understand, reach within and then try to open up your perception a little. You will know you are getting somewhere when you begin to converse in cryptic languages yourself rather than being on the receiving end of a message that you don't understand. For example, take the following 2 instances of cryptic communication in the out-of-body state accompanied by inner sense precepts. So, I guess he found an out-of-body character, and it says, Parlez-vous, Francois? He said, my inner sense precept means, do you know how to speak the proper language in the out-of-body state? So he said back to him, Je parle un peu, I guess. My inner sense precept means I'm partly able to speak it. The out-of-body character that he ran into said, do you think it is true, the Hindu raising of the dead? My inner sense precept interpreted that as, do you think it's true that there is an afterlife, such as proposed in Eastern and religiously inspired writings? So he said back, me, I suppose so, but not all raised at once. So his inner sense precept means, I suppose so, but not in any traditional religious sense. Now, this is weird, right? Because a lot of stuff they're saying, they're decrypting it in their consciousness as he's talking back and forth to this entity or whatever, or person. But what I really, because I did read ahead a little bit in this, and what I really find that's cool about this is, if you read Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, there's all kinds of weird conversations that he has with beings in that book. And later on, he comes up with his own kind of cryptic language, but that's in the second book. So a lot of that stuff that he reported, in my opinion, in the first book, when he's having those kind of weird conversations and they're saying kind of weird things, they have kind of deeper meanings underlying what they're saying back. Now, we do that on the earth. Sometimes we'll answer questions and talk to each other, but there's some kind of underlying thing that we're not really saying. But in the out-of-body state, it's a bit more cryptic, I would say. So I thought that's really cool, because that makes a lot of what Robert Monroe stuff goes through make total sense, you know. So the interesting part about communication with the inner senses is that it suggests that the physical, ordinary use of language, it suggests that it's not entirely natural to the out-of-body state. In fact, the same could be said for any attempt in which you try to visit another person in the physical field. This isn't always an easy task to accomplish, since social interaction has a tendency to open up a field of consciousness that's much wider than the physical field alone. Now, just as an example, I don't know that if I actually talked to my dad or whatever, but I remember like one of the second or third times I got out of body, I was so excited when I was out of body. I went to his room where he was sleeping, and I was standing beside his bed. Now, I think now, based on what I know, that it was my mind kind of talking for him, but it could have been him. But I basically, like what he's talking about, I said, hey, Pop, guess what? And he said, what? He's like, what? And I said, man, I'm out of body. I'm like out of my body. I'm asleep somewhere else, but I'm out of my body standing right here beside your bed, you know. And my dad said, yeah, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm just standing here, right? And he goes, wow. Like sarcastically. But I did write that down in my journal when it happened, but I kind of think that now that happened, that either my inner sense or my inner voice was created that, or it was him. Either way, speaking to me, saying, now that you're out of body, basically, like, what are you going to do about it? Why are you doing this, you know? Yeah, that's what he did. He was like, wow, you know, how practical, like, what's the use of it? It was kind of funny. So here's another journal entry by Frederick, Thursday, February the 5th, 2009 at 5:25 a.m. He said, last night, this is pretty cool, I decided to visit John, a fellow projector living in Georgia whom I know from the internet. It took me a long time to get into the proper condition to get out of body, but eventually the vibrations arrived. I moved my phantom body into a sitting position on the bed until I felt completely detached from the physical body, and then proceeded to fly out the window into the void. I continued flying in the void for a while until I got a sense of John. It arrived as hearing music somewhere deep inside of the void ahead of me. The music was faint at first, but as I moved closer, I was able to make out the voice of a man. I was unfamiliar with the melody. It had a country twang to it. He's probably listening to Garth Brooks or something, right? Maybe George Strait. It didn't take long for me to reach the source of the sound, and soon I found myself in the back garden of what I assumed to be John's house. It was packed with people. Near the house, a couple of women and children were playing and chatting, and some of them sitting on benches or couches, others standing around. Further into the garden was a round table with 6 to 8 men sitting around it. I realized that all of this was quite impossible. It was nighttime, and John would be asleep. Everything looked quite curious as well to have so many people outside at this hour. Dawn had barely arrived. So instead of trying to clear up any distortions, I decided to go with it and walked up to the table where the men were sitting. And one of the men I recognized as John, not because of his appearance, which was different than in real life, but I got the inner sense precept that it was him. John was unnaturally tall, almost 7 feet. It was not at all like real life. He looked a little pale and tired, but he appeared to be in a good mood, jovial with everyone as usual. It was a friendly group chatting about anything and everything, and I walked up to them and introduced myself. See, this is perfect, right? So when he's out of body and he's telling himself, like, I want to go visit my friend John, who's another astral traveler. So he doesn't even fly over the trees or tries to map it out. He just goes straight into the void. His consciousness, right, takes him to John. But when he gets there, it's nighttime, but there's all kinds of like social stuff going on. So instead of going, oh man, this can't be real, or being afraid of it, he just kind of stayed open to it and went with it, right? So he said, hey, John, I decided to come over and pay you a visit, I said. He answered back, Fred, nice to see you here. You know, this doesn't make sense, right? Why are you here in the back garden? I was planning to help you have an out-of-body experience. You should be in bed. John says, I know, but what can we do? We're all dreaming. I don't know either. How do you get a person to become lucid inside of a dream? Whoa, right? So the guy's telling him, John's responding back to him like, I'm inside of a dream right now. Doesn't seem so easy, John said. Everyone around the table began to laugh about our dilemma. They understood the problem, but no one had any solutions to offer. I could not think of anything either, not under these circumstances anyways. Oh, well, forget about becoming lucid then, but I need something to make it worthwhile, perhaps some piece of information so we can try to validate this visit later on. John looked pensive as he tried to come up with a solution. Then one of the other men raised his hand. Hey, my name is Mark, and I always listen to this song called Gold Whisper whenever I feel tense and need to relax. I got a brief percept of a black woman singing the song, although I had no sense of the melody. That should do, I said. At least it's something. And with the formalities and experimentation over, I began to relax a little bit. John said to him, while he's in the middle of a dream, You want me to show you around the house, Fred? John asked. Please, I said, I'd like that. So John got up from his chair, and together we walked into the kitchen, which was located at the back of the house. It looked pretty bland. The color seemed dead, as if the place had no energy. It was clear to me that it was not his real kitchen as it was in physical life. It was more energetic, perhaps representing a lack of nourishment in the emotional realm. You're going to have to do something about the kitchen, John, I said. Yeah, I know, he said. No one ever spends much time in here. It's dead. Want me to try to do something about it? I've got an idea. Sure, go right ahead. I waved my hand across the visual scenery of the kitchen, and my vision temporarily blacked out. That's weird. I could feel myself still standing in the same spot, but I couldn't see anything. I almost lost it entirely, feeling the pull of my physical body. I waved my hand again, and the kitchen environment reappeared, but this time it looked entirely different than before. The walls of the kitchen were now covered in large, shiny stones in a variety of bright colors, red, white, and yellow. My friend John laughed. He said, That looks awful. I looked around and laughed as well. It sure is different, though. It's a little gaudy, but it did brighten up the place, didn't it? It sure did, John said. Come, I'll show you upstairs. It's much better. We walked up some stairs until we reached, and this guy's talking back to him all while he's telling him I'm inside of a lucid dream. So this gets really trippy, man. We walked some stairs until we reached the uppermost level of the house. I didn't try to memorize every little detail I encountered to validate anything later on. I had already realized that this was his mental house. And eventually we reached a spacious attic that was clean and well organized. A lot of stuff was lying around, but without disorder. And some of the things lying around were games such as football tables, for example, like a football table. And some of the other objects I didn't recognize. Well, you did pretty well for yourself, John, I said. You amassed a lot over the years. Thanks, John said. Here, let me show you something. Then John walked over to what looked like a rolled up piece of carpet. It seemed to be something entirely different, though I got excited, expecting some sort of amazing board game to be revealed once the carpet was unrolled. But my awareness wavered, and I woke up back in bed. I separated again soon after, and for a moment I thought about going back to see John, but I decided against it. What the hell? That's pretty crazy. Astral decorating. Yeah. So what's going on here? We got some questions, right? So he's out of body. He's going to visit his buddy John. He flew into the void, went to a garden with all these people here. It doesn't make sense. The house don't even look like the same as John's. The guy that he runs to don't even look like John. He's taller than John. He's pale, but he knows it's John. John tells him, man, I'm inside of a lucid dream. They start chatting. How are we going to remember this? Some guy, random dude. So we don't know, first off, like, who's projecting the people? Is it John? Is it Fred? Is it both of them? So when the guy at the table raises his hand and says, hey, I got an idea, like, remember this song or whatever, you know, there's a lot of questions here to be answered, right? Now, to me, this stuff is completely cool, man. This is so freaking cool. He said, following the experience, I related the out-of-body experience to John, as expected. But there was little in terms of physical resemblance, although John did often entertain people in the back garden. The information from Mark did not turn up to anything interesting. Either John had a friend named Mark. John did have a friend named Mark, but he had not seen him in a long time. On a subjective level, however, John felt the experience completely corresponded, including the symbolic nature of the kitchen and the attic. Regrettably, subjective correspondence is difficult to measure. So what is he saying? Like, I can't figure this out. This is what's weird. So, like, when Thomas Campbell was on Rogan and he said, man, we used to go out of body in separate rooms with him and what the hell was the guy's name that he said? Dan? And then Joe McMonagle's wife? None of this stuff was recorded. Because every time I've talked to somebody out of body or tried to go see somebody, like, this is the kind of stuff that happens. Not to this extent. I haven't gone this deep into it. But, like, when I talk to my dad, he don't remember talking to me at all. But that's exactly what he would say. That's exactly how he would say it. So, did I talk to his dream body, or was he such in a deep state of dreaming that he doesn't remember talking to me, or what? Right? And there's no way to figure out everything that's going on here. So let me go here a little further into this. I think it does go further. I don't know. I moved through the void for a little while. Okay, so this is continued on. I moved through the void for a little while and randomly touched ground somewhere. The environment appeared immediately, and I found myself in a large public area, an underground transportation hub of some kind, and it was busy with lots of people moving about. I watched people coming and going for a while before noticing something unusual. None of them seemed to see me. There was not even a glance, as you would normally do, to keep from running into other people. I seemed to be invisible. I wonder where I had ended up. It was not a physical environment I recognized, and even though I had landed randomly somewhere, the intent had been to enter a non-physical environment. So after a while, I finally caught a glance from someone coming in my direction. It was a young woman. Unlike the other people, she did seem to notice me. "Hey, can you see me?" I asked. She was a bit taken aback with the question, but then quickly composed herself. "Yeah, I see you. You're dead. That's why no one else can see you." Not really," I responded. "Look at me a bit more closely." She seemed a little annoyed and made a reluctant effort to look at me more closely. Her eyes widened for a split second, and then she suddenly put on a friendly face as an image was superimposed on her torso, while her real torso behind it became a blur. It was the image of a perfect naked model's body. I was not at all in a sexual frame of mind when this occurred, quite the opposite. She was fairly plain looking, and there was the distinct impression that she had created that image, superimposing it on her body. What the hell? That's insane, man. This was odd. I had never before experienced another character so clearly manipulating my perception of what they look like. Some tricksters might be deceiving now and then, but not actually manipulating my perception. "Thank you for the invitation," I said, "but I'm already with someone." I responded in the friendliest manner I could think of. My rejection did not go down well. She looked pretty upset and ran off towards a bathroom door not far from where we stood. I felt bad that she had taken my response so badly, and I ran after her to explain. "Damn, he's chasing her down in the astral realm. No, wait a minute. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." So I got a very uncomfortable feeling. There was something very wrong about all this. Then all of a sudden, I was jumped from all sides by 3 ghoulish, crazy-looking people who were clawing and pulling at me. Yikes. I tried to get back to the door, but I was unable to move with all 3 of them hanging on to me. I had taken a different approach. I emptied my mind and then tried to ignore the environment around me, and I was surprised that I was able to do so with all the clawing happening at the same time, but I somehow managed soon, with a single-minded focus. The darkness of the void began to envelop me as the environment and crazy people faded from view. I continued to hover in the void for a while, as it was difficult to get back in touch with my physical senses. And eventually, however, the physical world began to fade back in, and I made it back to my body. For a few minutes, waves of energy passed through me until I calmed down, and afterwards I promised myself that this was the last time I would ever enter a bathroom in the out-of-body state. Whoa. That's crazy. I'm sorry, man, but that's crazy. Like, what is it with the OBE state, man? And like people are always trying to like have sex with you and stuff, man. That's crazy. Like, I don't guess it's crazy. I guess it's everything that's kind of underlying and all of us are there. But he didn't say whether this woman was alive, dead, an astral traveler, whatever. And not only that, she was able to, according to him, like she was able to manipulate his perception of what she actually looked like. So this, my friends, whoever that was no was no amateur in the astral realm, because I have never heard of that. I mean, think about it, guys. We read a lot of books, haven't we? We've read a lot of books, talked about this a lot, and there's been lots of crazy, weird conversations we've had. But is this the first time? Right, this is the first time that somebody changed the way they looked. Like, they made themselves more sexy so the other person would want to sleep with them in the astral realm. That's crazy, man. Like, I don't even see the point, honestly. You know, like lucid dreaming is one thing. Like, if you want to lucid dream and you know, like pretend you're like sleeping with a celebrity or something like that, man, that's cool. Whatever you want to do. But if you're actually out of body, why would you, to me, no offense to anybody who doesn't think so, but like, I think it would be a complete waste of time to worry about like melding, club meld, or having astral sex or whatever. There's too much to explore. And see, the thing is too, is like you're constantly getting pulled back to your body, right? So like, you don't have a lot of time, man. You don't have a lot of time to, let's figure all this out and like do the whole MTV real world stuff. You know, like you don't have a lot of time for that shit. Every time I've been out of body, it's felt like I've been pulled, like I was being pulled back. God, whatever I'm trying to do or accomplish, I need to hurry up and do it because I might get pulled back to my body at any point in time, you know? So freaking weird that this comes up all the time. Astral catfishing. That's funny. I mean, that's basically what she was trying to do, right? Like, she was trying to, like, say, no, this is what I actually look like naked. And what does naked even mean in the astral realm? You're not even in a body. It doesn't matter. I think I have I think I have some type of what's up, Claude? I think I have some type of fear of going into the astral realm and being attacked by a bunch of sexually depraved beings, you know, that are trying to vamp my energy for some reason. Because that, my friends, wigs me out. I don't know why, but it wigs me out. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of all that he wrote about that. Really, like all the stuff that he's done in the OB experience, that's all he wrote about social, like going out of body with people, talking to people. That's kind of disappointing. I was hoping there'd be more than just that. This is why, if you haven't read Robert Monroe's books, you definitely should. Definitely. Like, you should take the time, you know, and go through all, like, get the audiobooks for sure. You know what I'm going to do? Because this next part is going to be like, we're going to talk about parallel fields of consciousness and parallel realities in the OBE state. So, I'm going to go ahead and do the top of the hour thing. Might as well, because I don't want to start this and then have to cut it off, because this is going to get kind of cool. All right. So 4 minutes tops. Go to the bathroom, grab a drink, whatever you got to do. Make sure you go to fringe.fm, support the radio station if you can, keep us going. Also, ltvpodcast.shop. The call-in number is 501-777-5631, or you can join the show at any point in time in that little live voice room. We'll be right back.
Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. I know you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick and proud aunt. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing. But not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. 1 in 6. That little girl sitting alone at the playground, she can't play like the other kids. She doesn't have the energy because she's hungry. School lunch will be her only meal today. It breaks my heart that this is the reality in our country, but it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. This food is then provided to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about using your imagination, learning, and having fun. These children shouldn't have to miss out on simply being a kid because they're hungry. To find out how you can help end childhood hunger in your community, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Seems like I forgot a lot, like how to help the ones I love, or how to tell the difference between medicine and drugs. When it feels like I'm just biding time until some god above gets his grimy hands around the throat of someone else I love. If I were you, I'd hate me too, so I guess we're pretty lucky I'm not you, 'cause I hate you too. And the last thing I wanna see is movies of my dreams, 'cause they're usually dumb, someone always leaves. Lately feeling better just feels weird. I almost miss feeling bad. I like making people laugh, but I hate being late to everything and always being mad. Seeing double every morning and by night I'm seeing red. Well, if I were you, I'd hate me too, so I guess we're pretty lucky I'm not you, 'cause I hate you too. And the last thing I wanna see is movies of my dreams, 'cause they're usually dumb and someone always leaves.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
All right. Andrew Ellis. That was cool, right? We hadn't played that song in a while. By the way, if you do have a song it could be your song. It doesn't matter. Any song that you want to submit to the Fringe FM, we'll play it. Just submit it to producer@fringe.fm and we'll get it up there, man. Pretty cool. Hey, it takes a lot of guts for you to write your own song, play it, perform it, and then submit it. So we'll keep it in rotation for you too on the radio station. All right, so here's the thing. I'm gonna try to get this going about the parallel stuff, but man, it's hard for me not to talk about what he just went through. Right there, that was nuts. I'm not like trying to offend anybody or anything. It's just, damn, every time we read a book about the OBE experience, it's like we got to deal with this sex thing, like to me, to me, it's, I don't know, it's redundant. Like, what's the point? What's the point? Why do we all, it seems like you're in a video game, like playing Diablo 4, and you got to get to level 3 in the astral world and avoid all the sex pirates out there that are trying to like meld with you and vamp your energy just to get somewhere, Yeah, how come people why don't people like have astral coffee or an astral doobie, So Joanne said, I did like that tune that he was just playing. Yeah, so that's the cool thing about the Fringe FM is we are trying to keep the radio thing alive because, radio is kind of dying if you hadn't noticed. Not too many people even listen to radio, but we have our own radio station just in case something happens or we get shadow banned or really banned or censored or whatever. And it's cool too. Like if you want to do a radio show, hit me up at producer@fringe.fm. We'll give you the live credentials. You have the reason why we take support is so we can pay for licensing. So we have licensing to play whatever music you want. And if you've always wanted to do your own music show, talk show, whatever, just hit me up. We'll get you on there. Or if you just want to submit your music, you can do that too. At producer@fringe.fm. So, yeah. Oh God, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, when I think about going out of body with people, or like exploring the conscious realm with other people, I don't think about I guess this is something that's inevitable. It's something that you have to deal with. But I got to tell you personally, I haven't dealt with this. I just haven't. I had more issues with that kind of stuff, like people trying to attach their energy to you and vamp stuff off of you, whatever you want to call it, melding, astral sex. Like I had experiences with that when I was younger, honestly, as weird as that sounds. Just strange experiences with it, honestly. But when I got older and I was just trying to get out of body and travel and do conscious exploration, it's never been a thing. It's never been a thing that I even had to worry about. But every damn book we read, we come in contact with this, right? Astral rapists, I don't think that girl that was trying to do that. I just think she tried to catfish the guy by changing his viewpoints in the astral realm, which is weird. See, I don't even care about that. You know what I care about? Like, here's what I care about. Was that girl real? Right? Like, was she another person traveling out of body? Was she like a prevalent astral traveler and she knows how to mess with people's perception? Was she dead? Or was it that dude? See, that's the kind of stuff I would be like thinking about. That's what I would be asking her. I would be like, hey, man, like, are you alive? Are you real? Are you a figment of my imagination? Like, what's going on here? Put the naked astral body up and let's talk. Let's figure this out, There's always a bigger fish. Dan Beard says the higher. What is that? Oh, the higher up you go, the better looking they are. Yeah, it's like it does. It seems like a video game, right? Like I was playing Diablo 4 before the broadcast tonight, and there's all kinds of different levels of stuff that you got to do. And it just feels like when people get out of body and they really start trying to do simple stuff, it turns into a freaking video game of crazy shit they got to get through sometimes. I would like if that ever happens to me, I'm going to just try to disappear, period. Or just go back to my body and be like, forget it, man. Okay. So parallel fields of consciousness. That's what we're going to talk about in the second part here. I don't know that we're going to go the full hour. I'm not feeling too well. I feel like I'm going to Ralph for some reason. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was that whole astral catfishing thing that upset me, like traumatized my consciousness deep down in there somewhere or something. I don't know. So the boundaries of time and space are relatively easily transcended in the out-of-body state, opening up the door to time travel, visiting other realities, and exploring distant planets in the universe, all the cool stuff, right? But regardless of the degree of reality you attribute to such experiences, you're indeed doing all of these things from a purely experiential point of view. Claude says, isn't the sexual energy an important part of the whole? Everything has a place, so don't discredit any one aspect of it, in my opinion. It may be. It's just not important to me. Not in the astral realm. I would think that's more of an important thing here on Earth. It's just not. It's not a. I've never got out of body wondering, like, who am I going to meld with next? It's just weird. Yeah, I got shook. So, however, it seems appropriate to note that a certain level of skepticism is warranted to the actual significance of such experiences. It's quite possible that these experiences have nothing to do with physical reality and originate entirely in the mind of the projector. Exactly. It could all just be in your mind. Nonetheless, even given these disclaimers, some experiences you will encounter in the out-of-body state will give you the distant impression of having entered a physical reality other than your own. Yeah, I get that impression. So the overall environment is... What is this? Is the radio still going? You guys aren't hearing music, are you? Okay. So the overall environment is usually similar to your own, including houses, peoples, cities, homes, roads, etc. Yet there are important differences, and you may encounter different social structures, artifacts, or technologies that do not exist in our world. Holy shit, that's pretty cool. Some of these worlds seem to have a history of their own, as if they have somehow split off from our reality, taken a different path, as if having entered a parallel reality. Entering a parallel reality is a fairly common phenomenon in the out-of-body state. Robert Monroe's experiences were a good example in this regard. He had several experiences of this sort before the idea of parallel realities was more widely known. He referred to his experiences as occurring in Locale 3, where he occupied the body of a lonely architect. Do you guys remember that? What's up, Jesse? Delmec, what's up, brother? Do you guys remember that, though? I'm going to throw up these slides while I talk about this. Here comes the sci-fi slides. Y'all remember, like, that thing when he was doing that? And he ended up, like, being in this other guy's body, living his reality, married to this other guy's wife, screwed up their relationship. Like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, man, if this all sounds weird to you, you definitely should get Journeys Out of the Body. Yeah, so Monroe's experiences were a good example in this regard. He had several experiences of this sort before the idea of parallel realities was more widely known, and he referred to his experiences as occurring in Locale 3, where he occupied the body of that lonely architect. Monroe describes the architect as a rather lonely man, not particularly successful in his field, and not too gregarious. As events unfolded, the architect met a wealthy young woman with 2 children, resulting in marriage. They lived together for a while. Are y'all freaking getting this? They lived together for a while, and there were several successes in the architect's professional life. However, things took a turn for the worse when something occurred that alienated his wife. And eventually they separated, and the wife left to live elsewhere. When Monroe's last visit, he found the architect lonely and frustrated. Is that like a walk-in? Does that mean someone can walk in and start living my life? Is that why all the messed up stuff happens in my life? That's why I'm going to blame it on a walk-in, you know? Monroe was uncertain as to the exact nature of his experiences in Locale 3. He considered that they might have originated from a collective memory, a forgotten civilization that may have preceded our own in history. He also mentions the possibility of Locale 3 perhaps being an animator duplicate of our own world, both different and related in some unknown manner. The idea is, of course, quite close to modern conceptions of a parallel universe. Interestingly, the existence of parallel worlds has a fairly firm foundation in quantum theory. In particular, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics both holds that reality consists of multiple universes where every conceivable possibility is actualized. For example, if you ever had a moment in your life in which you came close to death, an alternative universe would exist in which that possibility was realized, complete with its own history, present and future separate from the universe you're now familiar with. An alternative interpretation of quantum principles would be that parallel realities only exist as possibilities rather than as actual manifested realities. For example, the eminent quantum physicist David Bohm proposes that the universe is in a constant state of flux. In his approach, there is only one universe, which nonetheless exists within a larger field of possibilities, with the potential to actualize in regular time and space. Quantum theory aside, keep in mind that even if parallel universes exist as tangible realities, you would still not be able to experience them in an entirely physical-like manner during an out-of-body experience. After all, your physical senses are not operational in the out-of-body state, and it would seem difficult to experience parallel universes as an indigenous person with a physical body and brain at one's disposal. There are also psychological explanations to consider, which at the very least seem to play a role in determining the specific type of environment encountered. For example, certain psychological parallels can be drawn between Robert Monroe's experiences in Locale 3 and his personal life at the time. There is no doubt that similar parallels can be drawn in my own experiences, but none of these make experiences in alternative realities any less intriguing. What is going on? This is getting weird, right? So I awoke last night following a dream. Thursday, April 13th, 2006, 4:30 a.m. It seemed like a good opportunity to try out for an OBE, but in the end, it took me more than 2 hours before high-frequency waves of energy coursed through my body, allowing my body to smoothly slide off into sleep. I flew up into the air a couple of seconds later, holding still in the void. I was ready to visit the upper rings again, so I moved... What the hell's he talking about, the upper rings? So I moved a bit deeper into the void to get the starscape going. But I wasn't able to connect and soon found myself back in my body. Luckily, energy sensations were easy to trigger, and I excited for a second time, moving into the void, hoping to connect from there. But once again, however, I ended up back in my body. I wondered what the hell was wrong. I kept being pulled back to my body. I exited it again, which was beginning to become more difficult each time. I got stuck at the hip and had to peel myself out of the physical body. Worse, by the time I was completely detached, my body felt more solid and heavier than usual. It would be difficult to connect inside of the void with such a heavy form. I needed to lighten the load. Shit's weird, man. It's really cool, though. I moved backward in an attempt to leave the second body in a lighter form. It seemed to be working, and I felt myself peeling out of the second body in a third form. The separation felt a bit artificial, but it did seem to make me feel a little bit less defined. Taking advantage of the lightness, I once again moved upward into the void. Yet again, I found myself unable to connect with the starscape. I then tried to phase directly to another location, but no shift in awareness occurred. This was starting to get strange. Starting to get strange? Brother, this has been strange. It shouldn't be this difficult to get out of body. I descended back from the void into the bedroom. It looked as though there was not going to be any travel tonight. So standing in the bedroom, I decided on some experimentation instead by rebooting my visual field. So he's doing the Nintendo reset, I guess. There was nothing to clear up in terms of distortions, really, but I had nothing else to do. So I stood in front of the bed and waved my hand across my visual field, with Monique, my wife, lying in its center, sleeping in bed. Initially, there seemed to be little change except that my vision became blurry at the location of my wife's body. Then my wife began to move, and it was quite unexpected, even though the movement was similar to what I had once seen before, a delicate wiggling type of movement like a butterfly about to emerge from a cocoon. But I knew she would soon be out of body, just like me. Once the quivering subsided, she got up with ease and walked around me, and I had no expectation that she would be aware of all of this, so I didn't want to push the issue, so I kept things simple. "Want to go outside?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. Without further exchange, we flew out of the window. I did not care. Damn, this is like Peter Pan, man. So he watched his wife wiggle out of like her little body cocoon, right? He watched her wiggle out, and he's just like, "Hey, you want to have an out-of-body experience?" And she's like, "Sure." So without further exchange, we flew out the window. I did not carry her outside like the last time while we jumped out of the window. She seemed to have no difficulty with the movement this time. However, once in front of the house, a large stone stairway descended about 100 yards towards an equally grand garden. I decided to pick up my wife and carry her down the stairs. It didn't occur to me that the stone stairs were reality distortions. I was too distracted with keeping an eye on Monique. My lucidity must have degraded as soon as we left the house. Halfway down, still carrying my wife, I turned, and the house I had just left behind was now a palace of royal proportions. Seeing the palace felt rather strange, but I still did not sufficiently recognize it as a distortion. Our house isn't a shack, but it's not a palace either. You know what that is, brother? That's your wife projecting that she wants to live in a palace. That's what's going on. That's why you're seeing a palace. She's probably a princess in her mind, you know what I mean? Once we reached the bottom of the stairs, an uncontrollable, here we go again, sexual impulse took over, and we began to engage in sex. We didn't get very far, but I was once again pulled back into my body. But at least I had my lucidity back. Fully awake, the energy waves hit me yet again, and this was the 4th time. And after the last episode, I decided to give the void yet another try. Not surprisingly, I still wasn't able to connect with the starscape, although I had the feeling that I had moved deeper into the void than before. Hovering inside the void, I tried several more times to phase directly to my intended destination, but to no avail. In frustration, I extended my phantom hand into the void, hoping that something could perhaps just pull me towards the proper destination instead. Sure enough, a dark figure started to approach, darker even than the void itself, and grabbed my hand. It's like a void Terminator. That's crazy. This is just too crazy, man. No, I mean, this is nuts. I decided to go along with it as I told myself I was hallucinating. Meanwhile, some faint ghostly shape started to form around me, but nothing readily identifiable. I felt a little nervous, but mostly unafraid. The dark figure then moved below me while still holding my hand. I did not like the possibility of being pulled down and wondered if I should try to get out of his grip. Yeah, dude, I would. I don't want no dark figures grabbing my hand in the void. right? Because the next thing you know, it's going to start telling you, come with me if you want to live. And you just say, no, man, don't do it. Let's see what happens, though. I decided to stick with it and not react emotionally or otherwise. It's probably smart. I then felt my hand starting to get clawed as if it was a paw that was holding me, and I continued to tell myself, okay, this is just a hallucination. Except for a bit of pain, nothing seemed to come of it anyway. Oh, now he's having pain. Holy crap. After a while, I found myself back in bed once again, and lying in bed, I opened my eyes and I saw that it was already light outside. Strangely, I found that my hand was actually hurting a little bit, and I got out of bed to check it out. I looked at my hand and noticed white claw marks, some of which were even bleeding a little. What had happened out there in the void? Had I been attacked with an actual effect on my physical body? I looked around and saw our cat and dog lying in bed at the other end of the room. Monique was standing in the doorway, and she was looking at my shocked expression and the claw marks on my hand. Oh, she said, look, the cat and dog were fighting while you were sleeping, she said. It started to make sense, and I immediately calmed down, amused by the situation. I must have gotten my hand mixed up in the middle of the fight, I told myself. It was only a bleed-through effect, leading to that clawing sensation in the out-of-body state. But as Monique left the room, another thought started to dawn on me. Our cat is no longer alive. She died almost 2 years ago in an accident, and here she was, alive and well. I quickly looked around trying to orient myself. This was not my bedroom. It was much smaller than ours, and the furniture was nothing like our own. There was only flimsy cabinets made out of cheap wood. I almost fell down as I stumbled into the wall behind me. I could not believe it, that this was real. I had actually ended up in a different place. Where am I? I now began to get very worried. How was I going to get back? What if this was permanent? What about my real wife? The idea of a quick return seemed impossible, and maybe if I projected again from this place, I could find my way back, but I was obviously not in the right frame of mind at the moment. I felt homesick. The idea of my real wife being left behind on her own made me nauseous. I needed to find my other wife, the only familiar thing out there. At least she still seemed to be the same person. You know, the one in this crazy place. I exited the bedroom, ending up in a hallway with stairs leading upstairs. After taking the stairs, I entered a small living room. I did not see any luxury items. In fact, we seemed to be quite poor in this reality. The layout of the house was also entirely different. Through the window, I noticed a small shack at the back of the house with a bike in front of it. I had the strong impression that this was the main vehicle of transportation, and eventually, as I tried to find my way through the house, I saw Monique sitting outside on a small balcony through the window, and seeing her immediately calmed me down. I went outside to join her, and now was able to see the surrounding area. The house seemed to be built on a hill, one of many in the neighborhood. The view from the balcony was actually quite nice. There was a small, picturesque city in a valley below, and the feeling was that it was somewhere in Eastern Europe. I turned to Monique. She was beautiful, and I got a strong feeling that our history was quite similar, but with differences. We did not have much in any material sense, but despite the poverty, we were as happy together as in our other life. Where am I? I asked. Gruschau, she answered. Now, the answer only reminded me of how far I was from home and my real wife, yet at the same time, here she was, and I was overwhelmed with a strange mixture of love and loss. Tears began to well up in my eyes. What's wrong? She asked. And for a moment, I considered telling her about my predicament. Perhaps she was familiar with my out-of-body activity in this reality as well. Yet I decided not to tell her. It was just too strange. We came a long way, didn't we? I heard myself say instead. She looked straight into my eyes with a beautiful smile, and that almost broke my heart in two. Yes, we did, she said. And the next moment, I found myself back in my bedroom. It was my real bedroom this time. In fact, it took a little while before I was convinced I had actually made it back. Once I felt reasonably sure, I woke up my wife, Monique, who was lying next to me. It took me a little while to fully reorient myself back into this reality. What the hell is going on? All right, folks, like this is getting, if what this guy is saying is real, and it's the same thing that happened to Robert Monroe. Like this dude jumped into a parallel reality. I know that sounds freaking nuts, but it can't be too nuts. I mean, I've heard about people being locked. Well, for instance, not the out of body state, but even people that take like salvia end up feeling like they're in other realities for long periods of time, even when they're only out for just a few minutes here. Remember that this guy was trying to get out of body, and he couldn't, and he kept trying to get out of body, and he kept trying to do it from the void, and he kept trying to, and it kept getting harder and harder, and then eventually he started to have to play tricks on his mind just to get out of body, and then he started feeling something grab his hand, and then that thing, whatever it was, started clawing his hand, so he actually felt pain, claw marks and stuff on his hand, and when he woke up, I'm just summarizing this here, he thought he was awake, and his wife said, "Oh, that's just the dog and cat fighting." But he still could see the scratches on his hand, and it was still hurt. And yet, his cat was dead. Now, that would be not that trippy if it was just a dream state, right? Like a dream state, that kind of stuff happens in crazy, intense dreams, yeah? But when it happens in an OBE state, when everything just is as real as it is right now, where you and me are talking, that he must have freaked out. He had to have tripped out. I'm tripping out. I actually have anxiety. Think like I can feel it in my chest reading that. The physical field is one of the first major fields of consciousness you can expect to encounter, especially following sleep paralysis or a sleep paralysis transition. And during such a transition, if initiated from the waking state, the physical environment tends to appear as soon as sensory input is sufficiently diminished. However, accurate perception in the physical field is not at all guaranteed. There are no longer any senses to assist the perception of objects as a singular possibility. Any, perhaps, not even a brain, making it the sole responsibility of consciousness to perceive physical reality in an accurate manner. In particular, the absence of sensory input often opens the door to a variety of different influences that destabilize perception in the out-of-body state. They will quickly lead perception to deviate from ordinary perception, even to the extent that you may enter a dreaming state of consciousness. A number of actions may be taken to prevent this from happening, but doing so requires constant focus and effort, and in most instances, you'll eventually end up with a strange mixture of the real and unreal. Despite all the threats to stable perception in the physical field of consciousness, there are also a number of enhanced abilities that open up as you enter the out-of-body state. Overall, they indicate that perception becomes increasingly flexible and expansive in the absence of sensory input. These abilities appear to be an inherent part of consciousness, including 360-degree perception, X-ray vision, being able to zoom in, bilocation, and inner sense precepts. In fact, they appear to suggest that it may be indeed quite natural for consciousness to be out of body. Yet we are left with an uncomfortable picture regarding the objective reality of anything perceived in the out-of-body state. You will encounter many incidences that are difficult to relegate to the realm of coincidence. At the same time, none of them are convincing on their own, leaving the more critical person who engages in out-of-body activity with a fair amount of doubt. In fact, the difficulty with accurately constructing physical reality with prior knowledge does not bode well for situations in which you're unfamiliar with a particular environment. A more systematic approach appears to be required to move on with some level of confidence. That is, it's at least possible to perceive physical reality in the out-of-body state without any prior knowledge. Or is it? This, of course, touches directly on the topic of veridical perception in the out-of-body state. That's crazy, though. I mean, this guy, in my opinion, has gone deeper I mean, this guy is going as deep as Monroe is. Isn't he? Like, he's had everything that's happened to Robert Monroe. Is this guy still alive? I need to figure out if this guy's still alive. So he's talked about just regular OBEs. He's talked about parallel realities. He's talked about trying to talk to people in the out of body state. He's done it all. But that right there, that parallel reality thing, that is a freaking trip. The closest thing that I've ever experienced to anything resembling parallel realities or merging realities or whatever you want to call it is just deja vu. If that actually happened to me, what he's talking about, if I woke up, let's say next to my wife, but we're in a different reality and everything's different, I don't know what I would do, man. How does this guy not feel like he's going crazy? I'm not saying he is crazy, but at some point, you have to start questioning your sanity, wouldn't you think? I most definitely would. All right, let's go deeper down the rabbit hole. You guys still with me on this? Because it's getting pretty crazy. Crazy sometimes in the out-of-body state can mean complicated. It gets kind of hard to understand, right? Somebody help Christy Belly get in Discord. We gotta help Christy Belly and Mike Domek get into Discord. And don't worry, don't feel bad. It's not easy. Discord doesn't make it easy to get in there because you gotta have an email and a password, and then you gotta authenticate it and all that stuff. And if you're not tech savvy, it can be really, really annoying. So let's everybody help Christy and Domek and whoever else needs help getting into Discord. I hope they don't still use authenticators. So let's move into what's next here. Veridical perception. Now he starts this off with the evidence. Veridical perception refers to those situations in which your perceptions in the out-of-body state correspond to physical reality without any prior knowledge of the actual physical environment. That's also a trip. Think about that. That means you're actually traveling somewhere. Just like when you travel on this earth to a place that you've never seen before, right? You've never seen the place. Now, you can't really do that in the OBE state, but he's saying you can. He's saying that's bullshit. Robert Monroe, for example, reports quite a few incidences in which he visited people in the out-of-body state and afterwards found several matches between his experience and what had actually occurred in physical reality. There are many other such anecdotal reports in the out-of-body literature that gives the impression that veridical perception is the norm in the out-of-body state. Yeah, because you're a ghost. I'm trying to tell you guys, you can become a ghost. In some sense of the word, you are a ghost. Even so, scientific approaches rely on more controlled experimentation. They might be willing to consider anecdotal reports, but not without a thorough examination of these accounts. Regrettably, not all of them hold up to close scrutiny. For example, Susan Blackmore, a parapsychologist, relates a case in which she investigated the claim of a projector traveling back in time and visiting London somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. He was able to describe his experiences in great detail, including perceiving the exact bends in the river, which allowed him to pinpoint the locations he visited. His colleague in London subsequently checked the street that he had visited during the out-of-body state and reported back that he had indeed perceived everything correctly. Now, on the surface, it appeared to be a perfect match. That validated the experience of this astral projection. However, upon further investigation, Blackmore found that there were only scattered houses in the area in 1840 and 1860. There were none of the 18th century townhouses that the projector saw during his OBE. Even in present time, there was actually nothing on the street that corresponded to the projector's perceptions. Apparently, something had been lost in the communication between the projector and his colleague. Yet there is some evidence for veridical perception in the out-of-body state under controlled scientific conditions. One of the most famous experiments has been carried out by the parapsychologist Charles Tart. Miss Z, who claimed to be able to leave her body, was studied for several nights in a sleep laboratory. During that time, she was asked to try leaving her body and attempting to read a 5-digit random number written on a piece of paper that was placed on a high shelf, not visible under ordinary circumstances. On the 4th night, Miss Z reported a fully developed OBE during which she floated high enough to read the number on the shelf, and she did so correctly. While the results of the experiment with Miss Z are extremely impressive, certain limitations have been mentioned over the years. One of the arguments has been that even though Miss Z was unable to see the number from her sleeping position, as noted by Blackmore, it's not entirely inconceivable that she might have perceived the target through normal sensory means. Now, this was in fact brought forward by Charles Tart himself in discussing the results of the experimentation, trying to exercise due scientific diligence and exploring alternative hypotheses. It would have had to involve Miss Z having used some sort of concealed apparatus, such as a mirror attached to a rod, in order to read the number on top of the shelf. Alternatively, a flashlight directly pointed at a piece of paper could have reflected the number on the plastic casing of a large clock mounted on the wall located above it. Charles Tart considered these possibilities to be unlikely, probably rightfully so. But here's the thing, guys, that we need to realize. Charles Tart and many other OBE folks, I guess you could say, I'll just call them OBE folks, have made it a point to keep the scientific method valid so that this can be proven, and I'm glad that they do so. Perhaps more problematic is the fact that the study with Miss Z has never been replicated in the last 40 years with any other adept projector. This is why Joe Rogan asked Thomas Campbell if he could do it, because it would change the game if someone could prove this. For example, several controlled experiments carried out with Robert Monroe have been far less successful. During one of the experiments, Monroe was to visit the home of Charles Tart and provide an accurate description of the room. However, he perceived people who were not in the room, as well as events and activities that did not really occur. Other experiments with Robert Monroe reported some incidences that may have been indicative of veridical perception in the out-of-body state, but the results remained unsatisfactory from any scientific point of view. Charles Tart notes how much of perception often appears to be a semi-arbitrary construction, often badly distorted, even in the normal state. Another series of experiments by American Society for Psychical Research were carried out with the talented subject of Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann, who practices a form of remote viewing that resembles much like OBE states. These experiments involved trying to view a particular object in the out-of-body state and, thereafter, drawing the object on a piece of paper. Some of these trials seemed successful, in which the target object convincingly resembled the drawings made by Ingo Swann. Specifically, post hoc analysis showed that the objects perceived by Ingo Swann resembled the actual physical objects more than would be expected by chance alone, as determined by independent raters. Still, many other controlled experiments did not turn up positive results. For example, one experiment carried out by Charles Tart with hypnotic virtuos was unsuccessful. Likewise, experiments with the proficient projector Keith Harary showed that in the majority of cases, his perceptions in the out-of-body state bore no resemblance at all to the target object. In an overview, Susan Blackmore concludes that if veridical perception seems to occur in the out-of-body state, perception is extremely distorted. This is kind of what I've been telling you guys, like, to hold, if you're going to go visit someone or visit an area or travel in the OBE state to a certain place, your consciousness can go there, but everything that you're seeing and perceiving isn't going to always be exactly like that reality, because it's either your mind or your psyche, or maybe the other person's psyche that you're visiting could be projecting things into that reality. Consciousness is a strange place to explore, indeed. Let's talk about the card test. In the summer of 2006, I decided to approach the issue of veridical perception in a far more systematic fashion than I'd ever done before. I was already quite aware that perception in the out-of-body state was nowhere near as clear-cut as is often suggested in most of the popular literature. However, I did believe that veridical perception was possible in one way or another. For my first set of trials, I decided to follow a method suggested by Robert Bruce, the card test. You place a playing card somewhere without looking at it, and then try to perceive it correctly in the out-of-body state. Initially, I decided to place my playing card downstairs in the kitchen area, and to make sure no self-deception crept in, I set up some strict rules for the experiment. I decided beforehand that each time I made a call, it could only be either a hit or a miss. There was no possibility for any backtracking on results, such as that it may have been partially correct or there was some form of correspondence on a symbolic or subjective level. In addition, I decided that I could make a call on the basis of anything I had perceived in the out-of-body state, even if it was distorted. For example, if I perceived something only remotely resembling an ace of hearts, I could make the call, even though I perceived it as different. Of course, if I did not make a call due to not having enough information or anything else, it would not be included in any of the results. With this setup, I felt fairly optimistic that I would be able to obtain significant results. Of course, the lack of any of these kinds of controlled experiments in most of the out-of-body literature should have given me a pause right then and there. I will report my attempts here in their entirety, which will illustrate the difficulties involved with veridical perception in the out-of-body state, especially under controlled, non-spontaneous conditions. Journal entry, Sunday, July 23rd, 2006, 3:10 a.m. Last night, I finally had a chance to detach from the physical body. Once energy sensations had intensified sufficiently, I immediately separated and got out of my bed. I quickly noticed a cabinet against the wall in the bedroom that did not belong there, but I had an experiment to do, so I didn't let any of my attention linger on it. I was downstairs. I would try to clear up any distortions downstairs when I got there. I made my way to the bedroom door. Standing in front of it, I could just see myself getting stuck while trying to go through. I was a little bit nervous about messing things up, so instead of moving through it, I simply grabbed the handle and opened the door. Beyond the door, it was very dark. I had to feel my way going down the stairs. I hoped I would be able to see something once I got downstairs. I had made sure to leave the light on, but when I reached the bottom of the stairs, I still couldn't see. I got frustrated and promptly woke up before I even made it to the kitchen. Journal entry, Friday, July 28, 2006, 2 a.m. I tried to continue the experiment last night. I'd already been moving in and out of the hypnagogic sleep stage for a while. Eventually, the energy sensations hit me, and I relaxed into them and then detached fully from the physical body. But something wasn't right. There was another person lying in bed between my wife and me. Almost immediately, as soon as I noticed him, he tried to convince me not to do the experiment. Might it be dangerous to go out there? Why not do something else more interesting? Who knows what the outcome of the experiment will be anyway? Why even try? It did not take me long to figure out that the character was an aspect of myself. He represented all of my representations about the experiment. Still, I was surprised by all the objections. I did not realize I had that many. Monique had woken up by this time, and of course she had not really awoken, but I did not question the situation. I just wanted to get the experiment done. How to get rid of him, I asked her. There was no answer. I then tried to block the person out of my mind, ignoring his very presence. He disappeared into thin air soon after. I was initially surprised that it worked so well, but before I had even moved to go downstairs, I heard a loud knocking on the front door. Now I was getting a little mad. I rushed downstairs to throw any potential intruder out of the house. Remember, he's still out of body too, I think. Once downstairs, I opened the front door. I did not expect to see what I did. There was an entire carnival going on outside. There were inviting-looking stands all across the neighborhood with vendors offering games, food, and toys. It certainly looked like a lot more fun than doing an experiment. I must have lost lucidity soon after, because I vaguely remember trying to buy a hamburger somewhere. I even remember seeing a dancing elephant. No playing card anywhere to be seen, however. Journal entry, Wednesday, August 2nd, 2006, 4:40 a.m. After my last 2 failed attempts, I moved the experiment to the 2nd floor in a small room next to the bedroom. It should be easier to reach, I thought. The same night, I had another out-of-body experience. The OBE occurred fairly late at night. I had woken up and stayed awake for a while until the energy sensations came. Once they did, I rolled out of body, landing on the floor beside the bed. I had some problems getting up and walking, and I felt too heavy. So I started to move on all 4s. And once at the door, I tried to move my head through it, but the door behaved like a trampoline, pushing my head back as I pushed into it. Luckily, after a while, the heaviness disappeared, and I got up. This time, rather than trying to move through the door, I just opened it in the conventional manner and walked into the hallway. Now it was dark, even though I had left the light on in the hallway, but still, I knew the card was in the room immediately to my left. I made my way there, but almost immediately a dark humanoid shape came rushing towards me as if trying to block my way. I waited until it was near, then I quickly jumped aside and shoved it as hard as I could into the wall. I could hear the figure falling on the floor behind me, but I did not look back. I was determined to get the view of this card. Once inside the room, it was a lot lighter, but there was nothing there that resembled a playing card. I had left the card on a table, but the entire table was filled with clutter, mostly a bunch of paperwork notes and pencils. I waved my hand across the table in front of me to clear up the distortions, but very little changed. So I went through the papers instead. Maybe I could find some clue that had something to do with this playing card. I soon came across a print. It was a picture of a knight sitting on a horse. It reminded me of Don Quixote. The print then began to shift, and a bunch of letters appeared, and one of those letters was the letter K. In my mind, this translated as the card being a jack. But in any case, I made the call that the card would be a jack. I continued to wave my hand several times over the print, trying to get the color of the card. Soon, some colors, spots of red and yellow, began to appear on the print. I decided it was either a hearts or a diamonds. I then tried to determine the suit using the same hand movement, and the print shifted yet again, and I got a vague impression of a diamond. I woke up soon after and made the call. Jack of diamonds. That was incorrect. It was the 3 of hearts. Journal entry, Friday, August 4th, 2006, 3:05 a.m. I woke up from a dream last night with buzzing vibrations across my body. I moved out of the bed fairly easily, stood beside the bed, and started to walk towards the door. Again, the door failed to move as if we were made of soft rubber or something. But I stepped back, pulled myself together, and then was able to pass through it. The hallway was fairly dark, as usual, but there was some light in the room where I had left the card. The light was rather dim, not as it was in reality, but I could see this time. I turned to the table, but except for a deck of playing cards, it was empty. Before going to bed, I had indeed left the deck of playing cards on the table, and this corresponded exactly with reality. However, there was no upturned card lying beside it. I made a large, sweeping movement with both my arms across my entire field, trying to update my perception. Now, there was a card lying on the table next to the deck of cards. However, it did not look like a regular playing card. It was an illustration that looked something like a cartoon figure. This was obviously wrong. So, I once again updated my perception with several sweeping hand movements, and it made the environment quite fluid. I saw a bunch of different symbols in a short period of time. Also, simultaneously zoomed into the card as if it were only a couple of inches away from my face. And during all of this, I saw a 7 on one corner of the card and a few red diamonds elsewhere on the card. There were small pictures of a jack, a queen, and a king in both black and red near the center of the card. It was difficult to make up my mind, but eventually I decided on the 7 of diamonds. After I found myself back in bed, I got up and checked the card in the other room, and on the table laid the ace of spades. Again, I had made the wrong call. So what's going on here? Think about this. What's going on? Is he slipping into lucid dreams? Is he blocking himself? Why are there entities? Why are there whole entities like trying to block him from actually going after this card? This is getting pretty weird, right? Journal entry, Friday, August 11th, 2006 at 1:30 a.m. Last night, as usual, after separating from the physical, I made my way to the other room. I've been getting a little frustrated, but I wanted to try the card test once more before moving on to other things. This time, I moved through the bedroom without any difficulty and found myself in the hallway. Then just as I was about to walk into the room, I tripped on something and fell straight to the floor. On my knees, I eventually made it into the room where I'd placed the card, and it was completely dark in the room. However, I was unable to see anything, so I awoke soon after. Now, following all these failed attempts, I felt quite disappointed with the results. Of course, I should have known better. The externalization of the inner psyche into the environment, as well as remote perception, leads even a known environment to deviate from ordinary perception. It was unrealistic to think that this would not also apply when trying to perceive an unknown. In fact, it was a lot worse. Ordinarily, while in the out-of-body state, there is not a great deal of pressure to perform. But during controlled experimentation, there is much more pressure, which increases environmental instability to a great extent. It does not take much for even fleeting thoughts and worries to start manifesting. For example, my wish to do more exciting things manifested as carnivals in the neighborhood. Likewise, the slightest worry about reaching the target object manifested as obstacles inside the environment. It made me feel like a knight chasing windmills, which of course eventually manifested inside of the environment as well. It wasn't until a year later that I decided on a new experiment. Yeah. Well, I got to pee so bad, but I want to read this. Like, I have to finish this because he's got to get something right because he's definitely blocking himself, right? I totally think so, too. All right, here we go. So this is called Reach Out and Touch. So after taking a break, I came up with an experiment that I hoped would circumvent some of the difficulties I've been experiencing. What if I tried to identify the target object by sensing it with my hands rather than by looking at it? It seemed like a neat way to conduct an experiment specific to the out-of-body state, and after all, a pair of phantom hands would be required to identify the target object. It would certainly not be the typical ESP experiment. For the sensing experiment, I decided to use 5 wooden blocks as my target object, and each of them with a different number of nails attached. Next, I found a box with a lid on it that was big enough to fit one of the wooden blocks in it. So, I don't know if I can show you guys this picture, but it's just, they're like little wooden blocks, and he just hammered some nails, and one of them has 1, the other one's got 2, 3, and 4, and that's it. Did I forget to check the phones? I did, didn't I? Nobody called, though, so that's cool. Unlike with the card test, I asked my wife to randomly place one of the wooden blocks inside. The box itself was placed on the nightstand next to the bed. I didn't have to go far to feel inside. I only had to roll over and stretch out my arm. Thursday, September 20th, 2007 at 2:10 a.m. Last night before going to bed, I asked my wife to place one of the wooden blocks in the box on the nightstand next to the bed. I also decided beforehand to combine the experiment with trying to perform the healing experiment for my wife. I never fell asleep before the vibration started. I tossed and turned for a while and eventually managed to detach from the physical. I sat up in bed and felt for the nightstand. My hand quickly found the corner of the glass top of the nightstand, and it indeed felt like glass. I then moved my hand a couple of inches further and located the box. And after I moved my hand through the box, I felt several nails almost immediately. I started counting with my fingers from left to right. This was a bit more difficult than assumed since I could feel myself starting to wake up. Still, though, I was able to keep my focus on the nails. I counted at least 4 of them. There may have been more, but I decided that there were 4 nails inside the box. Now, I did not look in the box until the next morning. But there was only 1 nail in the wooden block. Last night, this is a new journal entry. Sunday, September 23rd, 2007 at 3:15 a.m. Last night, I decided to go for an OBE again. I had been under the weather from a stubborn chest cold, but I estimated that I would still be able to induce an out-of-body experience. Immediately after the experiment, I would then turn to my wife. After a couple of dreams, I finally woke up, induced the energy sensations, and rolled over to the nightstand to check inside the box. For some reason, it was fairly light in the room, and I was tempted to try to see what was inside of the box. But I pushed my hands through the side anyways, and there was nothing there. I then lifted the lid of the box with my non-physical hands and looked inside. There really was nothing inside. I briefly wondered whether my wife was playing a joke on me. I thought I would go about it in a different way and check the closet on the other side of the room where the other wooden blocks with nails were kept. If I could figure out which one was missing, I could then deduce which one had been placed in the box. I got up and walked to the closet. Meanwhile, my wife had gotten up and was on her way to the bathroom, but I was careful not to bump into her. She did not seem to notice me anyways. When I reached the closet, I opened the door and tried to determine which of the blocks was missing. It seemed like a simple task, but it wasn't, especially with all the clutter in the closet. It was quite dark in the closet as well, and I couldn't see. I eventually located the wooden blocks with my hands, and I began to feel and memorize which blocks were there. The wooden block with no nails was there. Then I felt for the wooden block with one nail, followed by the wooden block with two nails. I was almost there, but got confused by the time I was looking for the blocks with three nails, but my vision and mind started to cloud. It might have either been the wooden block with 3 or 4 nails that was missing, but I was not sure about anything anymore, and so I made no attempt to guess. The next day I woke up and I found a wooden block with 3 nails in the box the next day. But I got one right, actually. That's not totally correct, though. Man, this guy's actually doing experimentation, which I think is cool. Last one here, Monday, October 1st, 2007 at 1:50 a.m. I made one last attempt with the wooden blocks last night. There was too much on my mind with my wife having surgery before long. But this time, I lined up all the wooden blocks in the closet and asked my wife to remove one of them. My plan was to move to the closet and try to figure out the missing block, as I had done in previous attempts. Later that night, I easily detached and made my way to the closet. I had no trouble feeling my way to the door, and once there I opened the closet, unable to see anything at all. I quickly detected a wooden block with no nail in it on the right side, and this caught me a bit off guard since I had placed the blocks in ascending order from left to right. The wooden block with no nails should have been on the left side. I assumed I was somehow mixing up left and right and decided to continue counting. This seemed to work for a while. I first felt the block with one nail, and beyond that one, the block with 2 nails, but then, as I moved on to the next, I felt a wooden block with 4 nails. Now, under normal circumstances, this would have led me to assume that the wooden block with 3 nails had been removed. However, one of the nails on the block with 4 nails was much shorter than the other, as if it had pierced deeper into the wood. I could have interpreted it as either a block with 3 or 4 nails. So I hesitated for a moment and then decided it had 4 nails. I surmised that the wooden block with 3 nails was the one that must, therefore, have been removed by my wife. However, the next day, I found out that it was the wooden block with 4 nails that was missing. Man, he has more experiments than this. Like he used colors, blue, red, orange, yellow, green, violet, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think we're going to roll out of here, but here's the thing. This weekend I should be putting up content on the Patreon page as well as the member stuff too, and then I'll also update the tarot videos because it's been a minute. The death card's the last one we did, so we need to get those finished. But thank you guys for listening tonight. It's been fun. Thanks for listening this week. If you can, please support the show. We need it. And support the radio station. If you want to support the station instead, that's fine too. And we'll see you guys in the Discord. Hopefully you guys figured out how to get Christy in there. If anybody needs any help with that, just comment in the YouTube comments, right? Like say I need help getting into Discord, or I can't find it, or whatever, and we'll figure out how to get you there. But I love you guys. It's been awesome this week. For all of you guys that aren't, patrons or don't follow the tarot videos or whatever, I love each and every one of you. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening and all that good stuff. If you guys want to hang out in Discord, I'll probably be in there for a while tonight. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy that he, it's like the harder he tried, the more blocks that he got. When he first started getting out of body, which is a whole other thing. Like, everything seemed to just work and happen seamlessly. Everything's quite provable. And then it seems like the more you try, the more you block yourself. We'll get into that too, because this whole thing that's happening to him, he goes into what's really going on, and it gets really interesting, but it's not what you think. If you're thinking he's making all this up or it's all just BS, it's not. He, in fact, is blocking himself. It happens. Anyways, good night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Love you.